Here we go. Hi,
Hello,
hi,
I'm
you.
Gary Biltcliffe, as you well know, and
Yeah,
it's my partner Caroline here.
Hi, Caroline Hoare, partner to Gary, and we've been writing and researching and questing for the last 17 years together.
yes,
And
I
we're
can.
still together.
I know. I mean that's something these days. So I mean, you're both very sensitive, like myself. You do dowsing, although I do a little bit different sort of dowsing. You've written some wonderful books. I mean, I've got the copy of The Spine of Albion. I've got one of your books on Portland, I think, and I'm certainly looking forward to reading your book on power centers. So, you got into finding out all about these magical places in Albion, Gary, through a ley line, wasn't it?
Um, yeah, well, it was actually a pilgrimage along the Michael line, something I wanted to do on my own many years ago, back in '93. And halfway along it, walking some of the routes and then getting in a car and doing another section, if you like. I wasn't doing it the Lawrence Main way. Um, at Glastonbury, I had this feeling that there must be a north-south equivalent because the Michael line is the longest line you can stretch east-west through the sort of geography of Britain. So I wondered if there was a line that takes the longest tract of land north-south through Britain. And it was that afternoon when I came down from the tour thinking of that, that I pulled out a book by Guy Raglan Phillips called Brigantia.
Yeah.
And when I opened the book, it showed you this line runs from the Isle of Wight right to the top of Scotland near Cape Wrath. And it passed through the old cities, like Winchester was the old capital of England, Dunfermline was the old capital of Scotland, Lairg is capital of Sutherland Highlands. So it was a line of capitals, but old capitals. It's like the old physical line of Britain, because the American Indians often say north-south lines are more physical and east-west lines are more spiritual. So I felt it was kind of like the physical counterpart of the Michael line being the spiritual axis for some people. So that led me on a quest to look at it on a map and then look at the locations, look at the history, visit the places, and then eventually use the dowsing because and that came over a number of years because at the time I was only a novice dowser. I'd been to one of Hamish Miller's workshops on dowsing serpent lines, but I'd never had the courage to sort of go on a quest and follow them myself until I joined a local group, the Wessex Dowsers, and they with Bob Sefton, who sadly recently has passed away.
Oh, I know, Bob.
You know,
Gosh, yeah,
Bob's
let's go
angle,
back a bit.
19.5 degrees. You know, his sort of contribution to the world of dowsing. Yeah, he passed away just before the lockdown. So you know,
Oh,
he's
wow.
he went and his wife went a couple of weeks before him or something like. But they both of them went together. But anyway, he taught me a lot about dowsing and he looked at what I've got and he says, well, let's go to have a group tour and take the dowsers up there and see what we all found. And Michael Poinder as well came along and he sort of doused the Bleanus line and then after that he said, yeah, there's something really genuine here and it's the same power as the Michael and Mary lines. Then I met your dad, and your dad sort of gave me the courage to sort of, well, go on, douse it, follow the lines and see what happens and let me know. So I wrote up, after a couple of years of research now, I wrote up the story and, I presented it to your father and Dennis. And he says, yes, this is a really interesting, a fascinating quest, you know, and I'd like to publish it. So he's tried to publish what I'd written at the time, but it never got published in the end. But to cut a long story short, he gave me the enthusiasm to sort of, well, why don't you write about it yourselves and produce the book? And well, 10, 12 years later, The Spine of Albion came about. But I couldn't have done it without my partner, Caroline, whose dowsing skills as well as sensitivity also was a great complement to my own. Because there are days when your dowsing isn't great. And some days when Caroline could pick up more things than I could, and other days vice versa. So We just found it was a good way of questing dragon lines is the yin and the yang, you know, the male and female. It just worked out really well for us. So yeah, and even today, you know, we're still selling lots of spine of Albions, and there's still lots of people coming along and says, "Oh, you missed a section between Carlisle and such, and did you know it goes through Gretna Green?" You know, and so sometimes we're pulled off on little quests to further explore it, but we realised, you know, when we'd finished, it could be a 3-volume work of 1,000 pages, because, you know, the axis of Britain is over 800 miles. And you know, I look through every square mile of that 800 miles. There's always something interesting. So we had to sort of tailor it to the most interesting. But we're working on some additions to the new edition of the Spine of Albion, because certain things have crept in which are too good to miss out.
Sure. So if we turn to Caroline then, and that's great. Caroline, so you got involved in this amazing dragon quest with Gary. I always think, you know, you went to so many sites, you know, going from the south to the north. What were some of the sites that really kind of had an impact on you?
Well, I think one of the first sites that Gary took me to was Winchester, in Winchester, St Catherine's Hill. That is such an amazing hill because it goes back to the time of the Druids. It's had a lot of things happen to it over the years, from occult activity to the great when everybody protested when they built the M3 through part of it. And so there are a lot of healers have been concentrating on sort of putting the energy back together again. But on top of that beautiful hill, where the 2 male and female dragons come together twice, on a great gorset hill, which is surrounded by trees on the top, and also a beautiful labyrinth, which, you know, debatable about when it was made, but we believe it goes back to the time of Henry of Blois, who was one of the key Glastonbury. What was he?
He was a bishop of Winchester and bishop
of Glastonbury,
Abbot
of Glastonbury and Bishop of Winchester. So he was grandson of William the Conqueror, very important man, very, very wealthy, and we believe he had a massive association with the Knights Templars, and brought to Winchester Hill, when he was the Bishop of Winchester, this beautiful labyrinth, which is still laid out on top of the hill today, and that's another node. So it's a very special hill where a lot of people get amazing revelations when they walk the labyrinth, when they stand on the old Druid Gorset, which is another node point of these 2 dragons. And that for me was a great
Titchfield Church.
Yes, and Titchfield Church below it, where a counterpart where the female dragon goes through, and there in a stained glass window dated 1891 was in memory of Caroline Hoare. Another Caroline Hoare, and so this was one of the first churches I doused the female dragon through. So I became very close to the female dragon. I started to communicate with her as we were sort of traveling north up the line, going to her various sites, and I felt that she was actually helping me find my goddess within me. So she was bringing that out of me too. And I think the other place that was very special to us was Uffington.
Uffington, yeah.
Yeah, which was an amazing hill. And Gary has had some great revelations on Uffington Hill. Again, that's a double node of the dragons, and where the dragons meet the Michael line dragons of Mary and Michael, and the alignments cross just below Uffington as well. So that's a very special place.
It is. I really love Uffington as well. And I can remember going there many years ago. And as well as, you know, I think it's Ellen that goes down the kind of axis of the West Wayland Smithy.
Yes.
I remember with Dad, he got all of these like pulse points there as well, and there's like 7 big pulse points, and I've taken people there to work with the energy of the female dragon and the pulse points 7 for the chakras. And though we've got a lot of lovely results and healing actually from Wayland Smithy, and I did some EVP there, electronic voice phenomena, and put a tape recorder in, and we heard people napping with flints on there. So it's atmospheric. It's got the beech trees.
Yes.
And so Gary, at Uffington, if we turn to you, that was a very special place for you as well.
Yes. I slept on Dragon Hill in the sleeping bag in the around about 1998, and I'd had this vision of all these druids. Well, I don't think they were the druids. They were a priesthood of the Iron Age. Whether they were druids or not, I don't know. But they were dressed in white. They came up to the hill, and they were observing the stars to the north, which, on that ridgeway, you're standing on that ridgeway. You look north. You've got a perfect horizon that's with no hills or mountains to obscure it, but to see the stars rising and setting. And that's when I started to look at what they were looking at from this dream. And then I realized it's where the stars of Cygnus were dropping down, as well as Deneb, which is the brightest star in the north. So, and I realized that when they were doing the excavations at Uffington Hill, that they found that the dragon actually dates to the Bronze Age and not the Iron Age as people believed. And so I looked in the star charts back to the time when they believe the horse was caught, or the dragon. And Draco was standing north-south in the sky. And so the diagram in the book shows that it's all aligned with, when Deneb sets, Draco is aligned with the polar axis. So I think that for me, the horse is a dragon, and if you view it from the south looking up, it looks like the Draco standing on the polar axis. But of course, everybody has their own idea about Uffington horse and whether it is a dragon or a horse, or some people even think it's a bull. So because it has horns and it has a tongue. But for me, history says they've been calling that hill the Hill of the Dragon, and the figure has been known since Saxon times as a dragon. So I'm happy to sort of call it a dragon. And also, white dragons in Chinese folklore are very special indeed. So to do with the healing of the land. So yeah, there's lots of layers of history and mystery at Uffington. But also further north, you have the Rollright Stones as well, which is another major site on the spine of Albion, which, of course, you and I both know very well. And further north, we have Stratford-upon-Avon, which people used to think it was just a place where people go to celebrate Shakespeare and watch his plays, but actually it was an old centre of St George, where processions of St George occurred on Ascension Day. And interestingly enough, the old procession of St George was taken over by Shakespeare's processions. So St George in a way became Shakespeare. So and it's St George's Day today, of course. So the day to talk about the spine of Albion, which in a way is kind of like the earthly counterpart to St Michael. So you could call it the Blenus line, the St George line, because it is the physical counterpart to the spiritual east-west axis. So, I also found this while I was going through my books this morning, and I remember Dennis gave this to me. He's even signed it to me. But,
wow. Wow, I haven't seen a signed copy of that in years, actually. Yeah. I mean, he did a lot. I mean, he called it Dowsing the Difference because he was working with a European master dowser on the earth colours, not the colours of the sun like de Belazal. I was trying to communicate that on a Facebook group yesterday, and he just gets lost in these little messages. But
Yes.
it's not what the French diviners were, and I've been doing a lot of work on that of how to work with particular colours within energies. But
Yes.
you know what? With David Webb, we got some really interesting results on the nodal point
Yes.
of Ellen and Belinus at Rollright on the ridge just past the Kingstone.
Yes.
And we got, you see, at dawn, you do get a surge of DC currents, intolerant currents that are quite close to the ground. But, you know, the idea is with people like Hamish that Ellen and Belinus maybe, well, he sort of thought them of Mary and Michael were much deeper in the earth,
Yes.
very deep. And so we tested an area, we had a control area, and then the nodal point of Ellen and Belinus. And on the nodal point, it was double the DC current
Right. Yeah.
compared to each side. So that was a very, very active place at Rollright. And
Yes.
when we did Ellen on its own, so to speak, in front of the entrance to Rollright, it wasn't as strong. So together, they are pretty powerful in
Yes.
terms of electrical current and metaphysical alike.
Yes. Well, some of the other nodes on the spine of Albion or the Belinus line occur in actually protected places, like inside churches, the sanctuaries of churches or cathedrals, because you've got a node in Carlisle Cathedral. You've got a node in the church of Wootton Warwen, which is a lovely old Saxon church just north of Stratford, which has the most atmospheric shrine in the middle of the church, where the two currents come together. And also you've got Dunfermline Cathedral. So we felt over the years that the people in the know, the kind of the Rosicrucians, Freemasons of their day, in the guilds, they had the knowledge, because the guild at Stratford was responsible for creating the church, which was built over the node point of the Ellen Belinus, which is also on a previous sacred site. So it was the old guilds that had the knowledge, I believe, and they created their church to utilize the energy of Ellen Belinus to spread their own power, if you like, or aggrandise themselves, or their order, or their beliefs. And this goes on, along a line in many places where we feel the currents have almost been diverted to a certain particular spot. Either through using power of thought or crystals, taking them off their course to a certain place and utilizing their energy. So there is a certain amount of interaction between people. I think take people away, the dragon lines would probably revert back to being very close together. And I think it's people's interaction that these energies are fed upon, a kind of, they need that kind of interaction, because it isn't just earth and people, it's the two combined. We're all totally connected, and these lines are connected with our consciousness as well, and collective consciousness.
Gary and Caroline, what I've noticed sometimes with the old, like the Victorian water diviners said, particular types of geology affect the way that the surface pattern of underground water flows. So, for example, in chalk downland or limestone, it's a very meandering sort of stream, and in harder places with harder rocks like granite, it will change the energy pattern. Do you feel there's any kind of correlation between geological things and Allen and Belinus?
Yes, absolutely. There many of the nodes are on geological anomalies, fractures, volcanic plugs, as David Carron says in his books. It's very true. The latest line we're working with from Bamborough Castle to Iona is based upon volcanic plugs and fault lines of basalt. It's certainly the geology of the Earth emits energy, subtle energy that psychics and sensors can feel, But the dragon lines seem to feed off that energy as well. So where they tend to node is possibly over a peculiar or specific or very sacred node of geology as well, perhaps. Perhaps it's just a way of the energies getting deep into the ground, because you know that serpent lines, they come together to a point and go into the ground and then come out again. So they're going into the ground for a reason. They're wanting to absorb something or take something, because if you dowse them carefully, you see that whichever direction they're flowing, they come out a little bit stronger. So it's as if they've been fed or they're feeding from something. We found this in the Isle of Wight, particularly on the Isle of Wight, which has this incredible crack or fault line that runs along the south of Britain. And the Isle of Wight is part of that fissure, and the node point on the island is only in one place, and that one place is at a tumulus right over the geological fault. And of course, we weren't aware of all this geological stuff until we'd actually done a lot of the dowsing. So, but yeah, when you dig deep enough in the research of all these node points, you find geology is at the basis of a lot of the mystery. So it's understanding our own Earth in a way.
Exactly. And Caroline, in your personal journey working with, Ellen and Belinus, and, literally following them, you must have felt like becoming one with that energy, because sometimes when I work with the very deep waters of Mother Earth, it's like it becomes immersed in you. And so what was your personal understanding of this, divine type of earth energy?
Well, particularly the feminine energy, for me, she carried great wisdom and healing, and she was the one who always communicated with us when we were perhaps stuck, especially when we were going through dense places like Birmingham and Manchester.
Wow.
When we were stuck and of course faced with a chaotic energy in big cities like them, we would have to stop, and I would always say, you need to connect with the feminine energy. You need to connect with Ellen, because she is the one who communicated more so than the male. I mean, he carries the great solar energy with him, and he is Ellen's sort of almost like her consort, but she has this very subtle wisdom, and she was the one that would help us to visualize, and she would almost speak to us at times as well about where to go to next. And it was through the water energy that she was communicating, of course. So we would find the wells, and the often the river sources as well would help us, because she could communicate through the water, and trees as well. So we would
ancient trees,
very ancient trees, ancient oaks, and so I would go to the tree and clasp my hands around it, and then I'd call her in, and she would then help us on our next part of the quest of this great journey along the spine of Britain to the very top.
And that's sometimes sort of the form of a vision, didn't it?
Yes, often, yes, visions, dreams. She come in the feminine energy often. With this new line we're connecting with from Bamborough, the east coast of Northumberland, next to Lindisfarne, because the dragons connect with Lindisfarne as well, to Iona. So the two holy islands of Britain and Scotland. It was the feminine energy that first spoke to us through dreams to say, this is us, and we want you to follow me, and I'll show you where the male is. And she did so in a series of dreams that came to both me and Gary. On the same night.
Independently, yeah.
That's a beautiful connection.
Yes, very much so.
So that's your new quest, is it? You're kind of going on this another dragon journey.
Yes.
It is. It's just like the spine of Albion.
But it wasn't something that we knew about beforehand. We were on our way to Scotland to give a talk, because the spine of Albion book hadn't been out very long, and a group had heard about it, and we were off to a place called Dunning, which is a fascinating place. It's lost its history, but once it had a great palace of the Picts. The male energy goes through there and connects with a great Pictish stone inside the church there. Wonderful folklore surrounding it about a saint coming there to tame the dragon, and it's a fascinating place. As I say, nothing left there now today, but it's a very key place on the spine of Albion. So en route, I said I'd love to stay on Lindisfarne, and because I've never been. And so we spent 3 days there, and we were set to work by the feminine energy. You know, the first night she was showing us the geology. Again, that area's got a great basalt ridge that goes right through Lindisfarne itself, across to Bamborough Castle, which is a great castle that sits on a volcanic plug, and that basalt fault line continues on for very many miles. And this is what she was showing us, these various important sites along this basalt ridge in the dream.
Yes, one of the messages, walk the line of
walk
rocks.
the line. So first of all, we had to walk the line to perhaps absorb the energy. The second night, we both had a dream that it actually was to do with a feminine dragon, and she kept taking us to bride sites, to sites that either were associated with bride or were called bride. And so we named her Bride. And then the mail came to us when we were at Bamborough Castle, which is literally, you can see Bamborough from Lindisfarne, a very atmospheric, enigmatic place.
Seat of the kings of Northumbria.
Yeah, seat of the ancient kings, the Angles, but also the earliest tribes of that area, the Vossadini, and also the Gododin, all these wonderful tribes that you hear about in the Mabinogion, and these the books like that tell of these ancient races that were always fighting for the freedom of their country. At various times when they were either fighting the Angles or the Saxons or the Irish or the Danes, these tribes that there was a continuity that continued at these key sites along this alignment of all these tribes that were fighting for the freedom of Britain. So there's a lot of Merlin associations and Arthur associations as well, up in the north and in Scotland. So it's a wonderful journey that we've been taking along this alignment, and it goes straight through Rosslyn Chapel. That's a big story.
Always lovely. I always love being there with groups. That's for sure. So if I were to ask you both, is there any subtle differences between or are they very, very clear to you that these two lines behave in different ways, or do you think there's similarities? Where do you think that type of journey will take you?
Well, I think they are very, very similar. They're both DAOs having this what we call currents within the band itself. So like the Michael line has 10, there's the 12 in the Belina sign. There's 10 in the Holy Axis one. So it's kind of like and the axis is almost the same, similar east-west sort of axis as the Michael line, but it has that similar energy to Michael and Mary. I found more than the Ellen and Belina's, a little bit more stronger and slightly different colours. But the Holy Axis has more of the Michael Mary sort of feel to it. But yeah, we're talking about some of the sites are so fascinating because they link back to the Chaldees and the early religions, places where the sensitive people were attracted to. People who were psychic and had the knowledge were drawn to these places along this Holy Axis. Cairn Papel is right on the line as well, and not a few hundred yards away, not a few miles away, exactly on the line. Anybody can draw this line and see the incredible accuracy of it. Because a lot of ley line work today, I've noticed a lot that people are being liberal with the sort of accuracy of these lines and saying that it's on the line, but it's a few miles away. But and they say, well, it's a corridor. It's in this. The Holy
Axis were a little bit more precise than that myself. Yes. With like your example, they were precise. There was no if, buts, near, close, maybe.
Well, the precision of the Holy Axis is something that made me think we'd start another quest, because after doing the Spine of Albion, it took quite a lot of our lifetime, really. Then 10 years is almost a section of life, but there's a lot of money that went into it, a lot of work. We had to sacrifice a lot of things to do all that work. And so our social lives as well suffered. But so it was to start another one. Although it's only a third of the distance of the Bleaner Sign, there's so much of interest on the Holy Axis, including Kilmartin, the Valley of the Kings of Scotland. It doesn't actually go through, the axis doesn't go through Kilmartin, but it goes to a point 2 miles north of Kilmartin. That's an energy point that anchors the energy of Kilmartin, because the whole alignment of Kilmartin goes to this particular hill that's on the axis itself. So, and also you've got these holy islands we found out in the Hebrides that we only found because when we left Kilmartin, the coast, the lines were female and male. When we got onto Mull, they're the other way round. So we realised that somewhere amongst these little islands between Iona and Kilmartin, there was another node point. So that led us on a quest to find out which island it was, whereabouts it was. So we had to do a lot of remote dowsing and also doing some research. And in the end, we had to wait for the conditions to be right, because to go on these little boat tours around these islands, and it took 3 years just to get the right conditions to get on a boat trip to get to this island. And last year or the year before, we actually finished the research of the line, and all the currents and the node points have all been done. But it's taken, it will take another few years to compile all the information and weave it into this incredible Grail story as well, because there's a lot of that aspect of it, knowledge in the line with Rosslyn Chapel and Cairpapel, and Lancelot's Joyous Garden, Iona being the burial place of the kings and Arthur. There's so much richness in it, in the Grail mythos, that it's going to be a big story. So you could say about 2/3 through it at the moment. Sorry.
I can remember doing a couple of regressions, past life regressions, with the Chaldees of Scotland, actually, through I think it was a lady, and I think it was a relative of hers, like a cousin or something. I did them a kind of week apart, and they both came out with these Chaldee regressions that in particular parts of Scotland they had this like beautiful, not like a kind of chalice with a stem, but a kind of like bowl shape that was carved all out of silver, that they used to put some water in and make the water holy, and then use that water. And they kept describing these beautiful dishes in the regression. And you talking about the Chaldees suddenly reminded me of that, because they're quite fascinating in their own right, the Chaldees.
I think they became spiritual caretakers of Scotland and northern England, because wherever we'd found that the energy lines were coming together or being drawn to a certain place, it had this Chaldee connection. And it is fascinating. We don't know the truth of the Chaldees. We can speculate, and there's a lot of speculation about where they came from, whether they came from the Holy Land. We don't know, but certainly a lot of persecuted religious groups did make their way to the outermost confines of Europe and found a safe haven in Scotland, away from the Roman Empire, because the Romans never really took Scotland in the way they did the rest of Europe. So, Scotland became a kind of sanctuary for these forward-thinking people and psychic people, because the Romans wanted power and control, and the first thing they must do is to stamp out all these religions. So there's all that layering going on as well that this holy act is connecting with, including Saint Kesog. I'd never heard of him before.
I've never heard of him.
No, but the line goes right through his island, and there's a node point on Loch Lomond, and there's a node point right where he built this ancient monastery. So we thought, well, if he's on this line and a node point, he must be interesting. So we researched him and discovered he was the patron saint of Scotland before St. Andrew.
Oh, that's amazing.
Who knew?
Mm.
But you know, these things come out through following lines, you know, and dragon lines. So that's the beauty of, of of what we call this serpenteering, is it unlocks a lot of history as well. Like Hamish used to say, you know, you never know where it's going to take you. You know,
That is so true, and yeah, I love, you know, like yourselves, get into the holy history of the past and kind of making, you know, reconnections with the ancestors as well, because I've often felt very connected with the ancestors, and even at Avebury when discovered the solar alignment there, that was because the ancestors kind of put me there. And same with the Long Skull people. I felt that they wanted their story told, you know, from
yes,
Stonehenge. So do you feel that, as well as with the land, because we've been talking about land connection and Caroline was very close to the female dragon and the female dragon spoke to you, do you feel that the ancestors are sometimes with you along your journey and like the spirit of place?
definitely. It's been behind all these quests. It is a kind of message from beyond, from another dimension, from spirit that wants these things to be known. Wants, you know, and maybe it's the time that these things are shown, revealed. So yes, with the Belina sign and Span of Albion, it was pure listening to intuition, spirit, dreams. There was a lot of psychic things as well linked with this. So there's actually, as well as a spiritual quest, it's also a psychic quest. So we do listen to dreams. We do look at circumstance, which is very important. We believe is the true guidance, not Ouija boards. You know, not trying to pull in the ancestor and say, "Tell me where these things are." You know, it's that's not the way we work.
No.
It has to be done subtly, and you have to be in the right frame of mind. It's a bit like the Grail thing. You know, you have to be in the right sort of energy to be able to unlock the knowledge. If you've got too much stuff, it's not going to happen. And so that's our belief. But you know, everybody has their own different ways. There's a lot of people doing amazing things and finding different things. We're just doing what we feel we enjoy doing. We don't do it because we want to write a book, because there's no money in writing books, believe you me. In fact, if anything, you know, it's cost us a fortune, but because we love doing it and it's our passion, we do it. And this Holy Access is you know, the culmination of all of everything that we've done together in our lifetimes to this point now. You know, it's very meaningful, and you know, it's soul satisfying for us.
Exactly. So if we go to Caroline, and with you're in Lindisfarne, you're on starting off a new journey, going across the country. Did you feel any kind of draw, or you're at a site and you think this place is really powerful, going along the line? What was one of the most kind of places that had a bit of an impact?
Oh gosh, there were so many. Well, Lindisfarne.
You were going to say that.
Well, Lindisfarne, definitely. There's something very well. I was introduced to through spirit this great feminine entity, this divine feminine, which, you know, we now understand as bride. Now, bride, we've met before because the Spine of Albion took us to a lot of bride sites, and she was the mother goddess of the Northern British specifically, but she's also known to the Irish as Bridget, Brigid. She's Brig, Britannia of the more ancient tribes, and of course that was something else that she led us onto a book that we wrote after the Spine of Albion, called The Power of Center, and we found that she was the key earth goddess worshipped at all these great power centers, but that's another story. So certainly Lindisfarne for me, because of the way it's connected by a causeway, but when the tide comes in, the causeway disappears and it becomes an island, and that's a very powerful thing. So you've got this this very sacred place with this amazing geology, powerful geology, with this feminine dragon sort of meandering across it, where they built an abbey, where a castle was built on another plug. So you've got Lindisfarne Castle and Bamburgh Castle looking at one another across a short piece of sea. But they're sort of connected geologically, and the feminine dragon crosses the sea to the castle. But there's something very powerful, and many of the ancient saints from Iona came across from Iona to Lindisfarne to set up a monastic site on these key places of the feminine dragon, and it's something to do with the power of the sea as it encloses, it becomes an island twice a day. The ebbing and flowing of the sea itself creates this amazing magnetic magical energy. It sort of charges up the island, and that's what you feel when you're there. And of course, after then, once we came across the causeway and continued across Northumberland, I think the next key site for me, although there's so many in Northumberland itself, was Rosslyn Chapel. And I remember after when we had our little holiday there 2 years before, and we were had these dreams, a psychic friend of mine told me that I had to take a piece of amber to Rosslyn Chapel, and I had no idea of the connection between, Lindisfarne and Rosslyn at that time. She just said it's very important. And when I placed that piece of amber after that visit to our little holiday in Lindisfarne 2 years hence, I just intuitively placed it at the base of one of the wings of the
west wall
of the chapel, and then we carried on our journey. When we came back, and we were following the feminine energy from Lindisfarne across to Northumberland, took us to Rosslyn Chapel. I got my dowsing rod out, and I dowsed her straight to where I put that piece of amber 2 years before. So
lovely.
There's something very special about, and we're still unraveling what was important about that site and why they built the chapel at that particular site on this great ridge overlooking this glen. Very powerful water sort of goes through the glen. There's a waterfall there, but it really surges through the glen, so that's very energetic itself. Below, as Rosslyn is looking down upon this great glen,
sandstone,
and it's all sandstone in that area. But there's so many other sites in and around the glen, the castle site, the Rosslyn Castle, which is just a few steps away from the chapel. Then you've got the well, and then you've got a woodland with 2 sacred trees in there, which we found. It's a whole magical landscape at Rosslyn, not just the chapel. So we're trying to unravel the mystery and the sense of power within that whole Rosslyn landscape. And then we're carrying on to, as Gary mentioned, Cairn Papel. Below there is this wonderful preceptory of the Knights Templars at Torfickan, of the Hospitallers, and again very important. But I think the next place was Loch Lomond, very, very special. These 2 islands, the islands of the nuns and the island of the monks.
Inch Cailleach and Inch Tavernac. Island of the Goddess.
Yes, the island of the Goddess and the island of the male saints. The monks. So very feminine island and a very masculine island within the Loch Lomond itself. Another very special landscape there.
That's lovely, because it's like a lot of island energy that you're going through. You're experiencing island energy, and that hasn't really kind of been done much, has it, by any authors actually that I'm trying to think of, and I love it when 2 elements come together and create that interface, that magical interface, whether it's water and earth, or a spire, earth and air. I think they are the magical points where you can literally make magic upon these wonderful interfaces. So it's really fascinating that you're looking into islands, and I'd never heard of the Isle of the Goddess actually. So
I'll push back Gary, because he can remember the names better than me.
Yeah, Inchcailleach. Cailleach is the goddess who presides over the winter, and Bride is the goddess that presides over summer in Scotland, in the Highlands. So this island is dedicated to the kind of the sleeping goddess. And actually, we discovered from a certain point along the shore of Loch Lomond, the island is exactly like a reclining sleeping goddess in the shape. And the node point is right in her belly.
Wow.
At the time, we thought we'd go with a friend of ours, Graham Gardner, the ex-president of BSD. He came with us and he dowsed the male and female with us. So it's quite a special day at that particular node point. And yeah, again, the next node point is on an island called the Island of the Monks, Inch Tavernet, which is privately owned, but it's where Cesog had his monastery before Columba. This was he was a Culdee, you know, long before, because often people think that Columbus started Christianity first in Scotland, but actually when you dig into the history, a certain history of the Holy Axis, there is much earlier people who are working with spirit and the land and psychic energy. And yeah, that is a fascinating story that we're about to sort of publish. But also, the Great Highland Boundary Fault goes right through Inchcailleach. Talk about the Earth again. The Highland Boundary Fault is one of the biggest fractures in the British Isles, and Inchcailleach is a part of that fracture, right over the top of it. So again, the node is feeding off that, almost like a PowerPoint. The friction, the rubbing of those energies of two great continents create power at certain times of the moon and the sun, phases of the moon, perhaps even solar flares can actually create more friction in the fault lines, which then creates an energy that can give you a kind of high magnetic field where people can have out of time experiences. And that's the other thing we've been writing about on the Holy Axis, is the out of time experiences that seem to have happened along this axis at many places. Rosslyn Glen, there's been out of time experiences there. Lindisfarne, of course, and Cairn Papel has had time experiences there, where people have gone out and lost time, or they've gone into a kind of, like I've experienced when I was younger, where I had a moment where I was so connected with the earth that hours had passed by when it only seemed like seconds, because our vibrations have been raised to a point where we've almost slipped out of time. And such is the power of some of these node points on the Holy Axis that they are also have legends of out of time occurrences, including Melrose, which is the female current is drawn off the main axis into Melrose Abbey, and the old Melrose as well, which is the Culdee site. And funny enough, that was founded by monks from Iona, who eventually went from Melrose to Lindisfarne. So, you know, this whole axis we're working with, the history of it has been known to these sensitive peoples, and we're just rediscovering this ancient way again. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds it. And what I always love about, travels to different sites, no matter where they are, is going into that kind of beautiful, different energies, because I noticed when I was in Egypt, which was quite fascinating, Dowson Alley there, that seemed to have three currents associated with it. Two seemed to be quite mature, and one seemed to be not as strong as the other two. So I thought that was quite unusual.
A kind of
in
trinity.
Sorry?
You mean like a trinity of energies?
Yeah.
Like yin yang and chi or something, or the middle axis.
It kind of felt like there was Isis, Osiris, and Horus.
Yes.
It kind of felt like that
Like
in a way.
time.
They were associated with that. So that's something that I may pick up on one day. And with the geodetic system of Earth energies, like the geospiral phenomena above what the well, it was Reginald Alder-Smith said it was a so-called blind spring. It's more like to be a springhead. They seem to be really energetic 6 days after a new or full moon, and it was Underwood that suggested that's why the Druids picked certain, like mistletoe 6 days after a new moon. And you were mentioning earlier that the sun and the moon and even planetary positions probably all play a role. Have you found with either Ellen or Belinus that they react to particular times of the year, maybe the eightfold year or anything like that?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. In many places we've written about these experiences in the spine of Albion. But yeah, there are certain sites that are to do with the cult of the sun, the moon, solar lunar worship. Certainly on the Holy Axis there is a number of solar lunar sanctuaries that where this worship went on in the past. Certainly, yeah. But well, for us, we always think, where is our local place to connect? With the moment, with the situation. We can't really go too far away, so we were looking at how to connect, with the energies, the ley line grids, if you like, or just connect with everything at a kind of your own node point or your own special place. And so I think every garden, if you're lucky enough to have a garden, will have some kind of line of energy or connecting place. And rather than looking at the Hartman and the Curry and spirals and vortexes and that, we found an easy way is just to ask the question when you're dowsing, which point of the garden do I need to connect, and when, and what is the best place to connect it? It's trying to get the questions right, isn't it? But finding your own healing spot where you can connect with the collective.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I found as well.
There's so many energies out there, even in your own garden. It can be very
that's what I'd say to students. That's really exciting because I do say to students, there's so many small earth currents that entwine and interlace the planet. You don't have to go to a massive current like the Mary or the Michael and just find them, in your locality, even in your own homes sometimes, and rearrange your life accordingly. So I agree that's a beautiful way of working with them. I love that way.
Well, we found a point in our garden, where it's it has that vortexy energy, a meeting of different lines. I'm not going to go into what those lines were because it's so complicated, but I just know it was a place we were guided to go or danced to go. And just standing there, even at night, going out in the garden with the stars out, it's a magical place to connect on a positive way, and keep us sort of spirited, because it's easy to be down-spirited these days. So we found the earth energies, are there to help us as well. They've helped us enormously in our life, and we've helped them enormously. We help with battle sites, because unfortunately, there are a number of battle sites on the Holy Axis that, as we found on the spine of Albion, because battles weren't just accidental places, they were actually chosen places, and actually they chose them. Freemasons also chose these battle sites, and not saying they're all horrible people, but it's about use of power and misuse of power.
Of course.
So for us, it's finding sometimes finding your own little node point in your garden or your own little crossing place, wherever your dowsing rod take you. That would probably be just as good, as you were saying, than by standing on the Michael and Mary line, because there is certain levels of protection you have to have sometimes going out to these big energy sites, and I know a lot of people have negative experience because they've gone at the wrong time. So again, with dowsing, it's always about asking, should I be here today? Can I douse today? Even, there's all the things we tend to forget when you've been dowsing for a long, long time.
Yeah, that was the lovely Sig always said, can I, should I, may I, triplicity, God love him. So yeah, I mean, I have a wonderful little technique as well, very similar to that Dr. Kathy Batchelor did, just for bed placement. You don't have to know how to douse the curry grid. Stand in the door of your bedroom and just say to Rod, "Where's the best place for my bed?" I mean, she cut it all out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
That's easy.
But then it's good to know the detail as well, because some people know to know the detail. So, but yeah, you're right. It doesn't need it, but the detail backs it up.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where I kind of go into my energy work with the different colors and the different frequencies and how, you know, that they can be used for healing. We're coming up to nearly an hour, Gary and Caroline. So I would really like you to say to, you know, the people that are going to be listening, how can they get hold of you? How can they get your wonderful books? And they are so thoroughly researched. I mean, the Albion book, The Spine of Albion, rather. I mean, it's so well researched. I congratulate you on getting the holy history of this land. So please tell us where you can get your books from.
Well, that's The Spine of Albion, and you can get it through our website, which is www.belinusline, that's BELINUSLINE, one word.com. And through that website, you can also find our other book, which I've somehow carefully placed by me, called Power Center, which we believe this
lift it up
book
a bit,
came...
Gary, so we can see it. If you just lift it up a bit, if you lift it, that's it.
Okay.
Brilliant. Wow, the power of center.
This book came about because it had to be produced now. We felt that we'd already started the Holy Axis when we produced this book, in the middle of it, because we felt it was important for connecting with centers. And not just any centres, but geographical centres were also important. And not many people, apart from John Michel, had really put that forward about the importance of geographical places, because it's the land itself and its centres that are also extremely powerful. So we looked at all the centres of the UK, all the centres that John Michel hadn't looked at. So we've covered quite a lot, the centre of Scotland particularly. And Ireland, of course, as John Michel did. But we've looked into the sort of spiritual connections with the centres and the connection with the goddess, the healing aspect to it, the spiritual, the ley line aspect, the earth energies, cosmology, all the aspects of these centres, because we felt there was a time coming, because the goddess, we're coming into the age of Aquarius. The goddess of that age, of course, is Bridget, bride, because her feast day is on the 1st of February. So she's the goddess of Aquarius, and therefore the goddess of the new age of Aquarius. And she seemed to be coming up with a lot of psychics that to connect with her is going to be very beneficial for the land and ourselves and our well-being.
And she's at the centre.
And she's at the centres. We found her at all the centres. She's at the centre of England, centre of Scotland, centre of Ireland, in a disguised form or sometimes very apparent. So this book takes you on a journey. It's written as in a quest, so it's actually talking about how we were feeling, what was happening at all these places, a little bit like The Spine of Albion. So that's available on our website as well. And the other book is our Spirit of Portland. That's that one. That's about a little island just across from where we're sitting at the moment that has every aspect of the paranormal, sort of earth mysteries, ancient. It had 7 stone circles, all destroyed through quarrying, but I discovered the churches are all equidistant from each other by a certain sacred measure, and that they try to continue these ancient practices of connecting with the earth in a form of geomancy. And so there's the Portland book. We're actually supposed to be doing a moot this year on Portland, but of course it's been cancelled now.
Oh, everything's being cancelled, hasn't it? I should be in Egypt now.
Yeah. But there's always next year.
Definitely. Well, it's been lovely talking to you both. You are Albion's top researchers, along with some others. you've done so much and given so much to the Earth Mysteries movement and community of which we all belong. You really have given a lot of your time, love, money, and like you said, you've made sacrifices for that, and we do in a way,
Yes, that's
So
our
carry
passion.
on
Yeah.
with your good work. I mean, it's just wonderful. You guys come out with I love the Holy History side of it. And I think, well, I
Yes.
haven't heard of that before, like these island things. And you bring back the memory of the ancients. And I find that, very, very amazing.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you.
Well, we learn from the ancients and we learn from spirit. That's how we go about our quest. We're still learning.
Yeah, I'll be getting back on the keyboard after this, to start on the next chapter. So.
Well, you're just as inspiring, Maria. Thank you for everything you do as well.
Yeah, we're always looking out at what you're discovering. It's always absolutely fascinating and relevant. So thank you for your work as well.
Yeah, we're kind of on the same path, certainly on the same wavelength. And right at the last minute, you two were just perfectly. Stay safe and stay well. Okay, and and when lockdown's over, we'll have to meet up at Avebury or Portland and have a good couple of beers or some sangria if it's nice and sunny.
We might bump into you in the Red Lion again.
Always there.
Okay.
All right, then you take care.
And you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.